Greetings once again here on March 16th. Continuing with the foray into the Four Noble Truths, and now the last of the Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. And tonight talking about right livelihood. It's interesting that Buddha included that one, gave it prominence in the way that it's given prominence as one of the eight folds on the path. You could make the case that if you followed the other ones, then you'd be doing right livelihood. You wouldn't need to have a separate one. But the Buddha put that one up there. It's important, needing attention. And of course, for most of us, and I guess just about everybody back in his time, just got a battery low, Paul. We'll see what happens. Anyway, a good part of our time and energy in most of our lives is spent while we are engaged in some kind of vocation. And all of the three teachers spent considerable pages commenting on the Buddha's statements about right livelihood. Gil Fronsdal less than the other two. Bhante G the most. Bhante Gunaratana. And Thich Nhat is this is such a classic Thich Nhat chapter on right livelihood. There's a couple of things. Just kind of giving some overview. Find a way to earn your living without transgressing your ideals of love and compassion. Would be a real broad brush way of looking at your vocation. Is it something that does not cause you or tempt you to transgress your ideals of love? And then more concretely, he says, the sutras usually define right livelihood as earning a living without needing to transgress any of the five mindfulness truths. And the Buddha had some specifics about these are not right livelihood. Engaging in slave trade, meat trade, alcohol and drugs, poisons, making prophecies or telling fortunes. Interesting. Arms. And we should be awake to the consequences far and near of the way we earn our living. So everything we do has consequences. What are they in this term? He says so many modern industries are harmful to humans and nature, even food production. He points out that it can be hard to be a farmer because on the one hand, you may be using pesticides and other chemicals that are really harmful to people. On the other hand, if you don't do that, you might find it very difficult to be commercially successful and make a living that can support your family. What do you do? Um, talk some more about the 5 mindfulness trainings and how it fits. If your company pollutes rivers or the air, working there is not right livelihood. Making weapons or profiting from others' superstitions is not right livelihood. He says, people have superstitions such as believing that their fate is sealed in the stars or in the palms of their hands. No one can be sure what will occur in the future. By practicing mindfulness, we can change the destiny astrologers have predicted for us. Moreover, prophecies can be self-fulfilling. You know, in our culture, it's such a game, really. It's kind of fun. Let's go down and have our palms read, check out some kind of thing like that. It's a pleasant diversion, but I guess in many times, and today even in many places, even wives of presidents, as I recall, Nancy Reagan would always consult astrologers about anything she or her husband was about to do. So it continues to be something to think about. Here's one that's an interesting one. He says, composing or performing works of art can also be livelihood, and that such works have an effect on the collective consciousness and to a large degree are a product of the collective consciousness. Therefore, the individual artist needs to practice mindfulness so that his or her work of art helps those who touch it, practice right attention. And then he told a story about an aspiring artist who was told by his teacher to go down to the lotus pond day after day. Just lost this. And then, without much training, drew a beautiful lotus, a childish one, but a beautiful one nonetheless. Where I find myself going with this is careful. You know, in cultures in which the religion and the state are one, and the religion gets to call what works of art are the ones that support the kinds of life that we should live, suddenly we're faced with censorship, destruction of other works of art, so on and so forth. So there's a slippery slope there, always making sure that every artwork is helpful and skillful in that way, and who gets to make the call? So that just crossed my mind as I read that. Then he has this paragraph that I think I'll actually go ahead and read. It kind of shows the ins and outs and the fact that nothing is quite as concrete and simple as it might appear to be, as we all know, of course, anyway. But he says, suppose I'm a school teacher and I believe that nurturing love and understanding in children is a beautiful occupation. I would object if someone were to ask me to stop teaching and become, for example, a butcher. But when I meditate on the interrelatedness of things, I see that the butcher is not the only person responsible for killing animals. We may think the butcher's livelihood is wrong and ours is right, but if we didn't eat meat, he would not have to kill. Right livelihood is a collective matter. The livelihood of each person affects everyone else. The butcher's children might benefit from my teaching, while my children, because they eat meat, share some of the responsibility for the butcher's livelihood. Suppose a farmer who sells his cattle as meat wants to receive the 5 mindfulness trainings, in which you vow to do your best, seeing the suffering arising from the actions of killing. I vow to develop compassion, protect life, and so forth and so on. I think we talked about that. So he would like to receive the 5 mindfulness training. He wants to know if he can, in light of the first training to protect life. He feels that he gives his cattle the best conditions for their well-being. He even operates his own slaughterhouse so that there is no unnecessary cruelty inflicted on the animals when he puts an end to their lives. He inherited his farm from his father, and he has a family to support. This is a dilemma. What should he do? His intentions are good, but he has inherited his farm and his habit energies from his ancestors. Every time a cow is slaughtered, it leaves an impression on his consciousness, which will come back to him in dreams, during meditation, or at the moment of death. It is right livelihood to look after his cows so well while they are alive. He has the wish to be kind to his cows, and he also wants the security of regular income for himself and his family. So what should he do? Thich says this. He should continue to look deeply and practice mindfulness with his local Sangha. As his insight deepens, the way out of the situation where he finds himself killing to make a living will present itself. He doesn't answer the question, can he take the mindfulness trainings? And it was interesting, he said it could come to him in his dreams. I worked when I was 18 or 19, having not managed to graduate from high school, as a driver, a delivery boy, really, for a butcher shop. And part of my job was to scrape the big butcher blocks and to take these big barrels of cut off fat and so forth to where they're disposed of. And I was frequently in this big refrigerated meat locker where there were, pretty much nearly whole animals hanging from hooks. And one night I dreamed, I went into the meat locker and every hook was occupied by a human being hanging. I didn't quit the next day, but it really did get my attention that something's happening inside me, that this isn't good for me, to have that kind of dream pop up. Then he says, everything we do contributes to our effort to practice right livelihood. It is more than just the way we earn our paycheck. We cannot succeed at having a right livelihood 100%. I like that he just said that, But we can resolve to go in the direction of compassion and reducing suffering. And we can resolve to help create a society in which there is more right livelihood and less wrong livelihood. One more story about Thich. He was once, two more stories. He was once, a question came up at one of his conferences. People were just asked to bring their questions. And this guy said, my job is the production of atomic weapons. That's what I do for a living. Do I need to quit? And Thich said something on the order of, wish I could be more specific, something on the order of, who would be better than you to have in this position? Here you are questioning what you're doing, questioning what your company is doing. And perhaps you have some influence in there. If you leave, someone else will take your position. It will not stop the production of your weapons. So you may have an opportunity here. So you need to really sit with the question of whether you should keep the job, as I recall this conference. The other thing to know about Thich Nhat Hanh, who grew up in the midst of war, was that he did more than one retreat for law enforcement people. People that said, there are times when I'm in a situation where I might have to kill someone. And leaving aside as best we can for the moment that there are all too many times when police do that when they don't really need to. But what he was presented with was someone saying, you know, I can be faced with a situation where I need to do that to protect somebody else's life, to protect my own. And he pretty much had the same answer, that I would much rather have the police department full of people who are thinking about this question. How can I present and bring compassion and caring into my vocation? How can I diminish the effects of violence in the vocation? Than have all those people leave. So again, interesting, not black or white, moving toward the right answer, sitting with your own stuff, kind of answer to the question that was brought to you. And of course, this is Thich Nhat Hanh, so he then continues. To practice right livelihood means to practice right mindfulness. There we are again. We have not yet looked at mindfulness, which is the first of the 7 factors of awakening and one of the last 3 of the Eightfold Path. To practice right livelihood, in fact, to practice any of these things, obviously requires mindfulness. And he brings up some of the things he so often talks about. Whatever job you're in, when the phone rings, do we take a breath in and out and think before we pick up the phone, come across the way we would like to? Or are we impatient and just go? And he brings up a number of other examples of that nature. As briefly as I can make it, Bhante Gunaratana also speaks even more at length. I think he has about 15 pages on livelihood. And he, among other things, among many other things, he talks about some of the same things that Thich did, also said that there are 3 questions for assessing skillful livelihood. The first one being, is my job inherently a wrong occupation? Am I actually hurting? Yeah, how about the researcher who is working on a cure for a horrible disease and is using animals in his research? Where do you go with that one? Not a simple answer there. I mean, some people find it very simple. You just don't do it. Other people find it equally simple. Well, human life is more important than the rat's life. You need to do that research and get rid of this disease. But there's a real interesting one. Where do we go with that? I haven't got to the 3 questions yet, but there was one note up here. Selling drugs falls under the category of dealing in poisons. Now, for over 30 years, I earned my living as a psychiatrist. I was all the time prescribing chemicals of incredible potency and power with many horrible side effects, with varying levels of how important and necessary is it to prescribe this. With people pleading, please give me this drug, I know I'll feel ever so much better. You just do. Also recognizing that I've seen more than one situation where these drugs have literally been life-saving. Now, I mean, I'm convinced. But part of the joy of retirement for me was not having to prescribe what I increasingly saw as poison. Because of, so many of the side effects that, come with these powerful agents. Again, I'm not a proponent of not using psychiatric medications. I think they really they're very important at times like saving place, but I also think that very often not enough thought is given to using them. Maybe they're being overused. You gotta back off some stuff. Anyway, it's just one of the thoughts I personally have. He has a little paragraph here. Because our economic system has become so complex, sometimes the determination of what constitutes wrong livelihood is not so clear-cut. For instance, is working for the military always inherently wrong? It depends, he says. If the job puts the person in a position to use weapons, including using a computer to launch missiles, it is probably wrong livelihood. But being a medic or a cook might not be inherently wrong. I doubt that the cook in the mess hall ever thinks, I want to feed these soldiers so they can go and kill. Maybe there are some that think that, but probably not most of them. But then you can also back that up a step. Even the Dalai Lama said that, when he was speaking of Tibet, when your country is being overrun and your friends and family are being killed, to respond by trying to defend oneself is not contrary to these trainings. So some people will say, well, yes, it is. And it's another one of those that can really be spoken to both sides of the equation by very thoughtful, very concerned, very well-meaning people with very different points of view on it. So the first one is this inherently wrong? The second one is, does the job lead to my breaking of these moral precepts or these mindfulness trainings, which is kind of the same thing in a way, really. He talks some about an attorney that every time he started meditating on retreat, he'd start to cry, but he used to try to meditate. I always wondered whether he was so troubled because he did wrong things to win his cases in court. Feeling pressured to destroy evidence or deceive juries or so forth and so on. But his point around the second and also the third question to ask about job is, what's it doing to my capacity for my own spiritual growth? Is it getting in the way? Is it something that interferes with a calmness of mind? Is it something that makes it where I really can't sit and meditate without having things arise that are agitating? If that's going on, then you need to have a look. Is his point, I think. At any rate, both these teachers have a fair amount to say about right livelihood. So feel free to check that out. Bow out now. Stop recording. He's leaving, family issues.